first things first, and this is especially for students who are not in my class, if you're interested in some extra things. So I have a YouTube channel for our class.
I watched it last night.
Thank you. Yeah, did you like Maverick? He kept shaking the bed.
I saw that. I saw like a snap or
He kept licking my foot, and I was like, stop licking my foot. His nose. But I had to do that lecture twice because the first lecture, he just put his head on my face and wouldn't move. And I kept pushing him and he wouldn't move, so I had to stop and restart. Anyways, so this is my YouTube channel, and it has all the lectures for my class from the last 3 months, including supplemental lectures, review sessions, anything along those lines. So it goes from period 7 through period 9, and I even put 2 up just a couple minutes ago. So if you want to get any extra information, especially on like period 9, Great Society, and you want something within 15 minutes to get a quick overview of what you need to know for like period 9 and stuff, I put those online, and you're completely free to go to that. So you search that, you come up. I would love more subscribers and more views. We want to get monetized. I want some extra money. So right now we're averaging about 10 views per video, so we need to boost that up. Okay. Maverick needs to be in all the videos, I've decided, because he got so many likes. Okay. Anyway, so next thing on the agenda. This paper right here, if you're in my class on A Day, you've already gotten it. Or if you're B Day students, you'll get it today. Or if you're from Pickett's class. This is taking all the key concepts and putting all those 70 pages of key concepts into one single page. So in theory, you could go through and see what you need to study. Now, some of these key concepts are really small key concepts I wouldn't worry about. So, for example, if you look like joint stock, if that's on there, that's going to be one of those random things that they put on, or military-industrial complex. Those are smaller things. So if you don't necessarily recognize that word, don't stress. But in theory, this has all the big things. The numbers next to it, do not worry about. This teacher who made this counted how many times a person was referenced by name in the book and put that number. Don't worry about that. And then all the bolded terms are the ones that they say are the most important presidents. I don't think John Adams is that important that you would need to bold it. But in general, that's what you should study. So if you want a quick, easy way to go through tomorrow morning and just say 15 minutes, I know this, 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 and this, there you go. Okay. Other than that, does anybody have any generic questions about how the AP exam works, where you should be? Yes?
The off-gym, is that like a pool area?
That's the pool, which is that way, actually. So off-gym is you will either be in the gym or you will be in the wrestling room. So you have 2 different rooms that you could possibly be in. That's where you're going to be. There's 165 students taking the exam. Or the wrestling room. They said they're going to try to fit 40 in there. Okay. Any more questions, General? Yeah.
Do they separate the FAQ section and the multiple choice section?
Yes. So how it'll work is you start with multiple choice, just put in the box. 55 minutes, 55 questions. They then say stop. They pick up the multiple choice packet. That prevents you from going back and changing your answers. You then are given an SAQ portion. You do the SAQ. You then have that given back. You have a 10-minute break. At that time, you can access allegedly snacks in your backpack, but a lot of schools do not allow that. Sometimes they provide it for you since they're really harsh on that. Hey, make sure you grab these 2 papers from over there. And then additionally, you then begin the essay portion. DBQ, LEQ, you can do that however you want. They do not separate the 2, but it is highly suggested you do DBQ first because it is worth the most points on the AP exam. Yes? SAQ, you have 40 minutes to do 3 SAQs. 2 are required. 1, you have a choice between 2. So 40 minutes, which equates to approximately 12 minutes each essay, which is very easy. You should be able to do that. Make sure you bring a watch, by the way. Make sure it's not an iWatch. But if you bring a watch, that will help you time. Just make sure it doesn't beep. Yeah?
Wait, so I'm just kind of confused. Do we have to do 2 LEQs or just
1? 1. So you're given a DBQ that is required. You get no choice. Then you're given 3 LEQs, and those 3 LEQs, you pick one of the 3. They will be from periods 1 to 3, that will be 1, periods 4 through 6, and 7 through 9. and you get to choose whichever section. So if you don't know anything about colonial America, good news, you have the other two options. And there's usually one that's really easy, but from a difficult time period, one that's medium, and one that's super hard. That's usually how they do it. Okay, any more generic questions? Yeah.
I'll wait for your
So, explaining LEQs?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to explain LEQs. This is especially for those students who are in Pickett's class that did not learn how to do an LEQ. Okay? So, first off, I attached both rubrics for writing because I heard that you guys in Pickett's class had not seen the DBQ rubric. So congratulations, here's the DBQ rubric. Flipping it over to the next page, LEQ. I'm going to write to you, in layman's terms, the easiest way to get points on the DBQ. Okay, so starting off with your thesis. Thesis is worth 1 point. You need to address the question, and you need to give specific examples, otherwise known as terms. It should be approximately 1 sentence, but some people also do it in 2 sentences. So, for example, and I'm going to be having you flip-flop back and forth, so I apologize. Flip to the next page. These are your LEQ stems. Every single essay is going to be either a CCOT, change in continuity over time, causation, cause and effect, or comparison, compare and contrast. They should look like this. However, as we saw in the practice exam for the first time ever and without warning, they did not do it in this format. So I don't know whether or not it will be in this format or not. It's supposed to be according to the AP exam description. But they didn't do that. So we're going to hope for the best. But in theory, it should be formatted like this. Yeah?
So is there a format in the way that was in the practice one where it's just like evaluate the percentage and it doesn't...
I'll talk about that in just a second. I actually have that example in here. So if I were to do the last one, explain the causes and consequences of imperialism. A bad example of a thesis would be something like, although there were many causes of imperialism, there were also several consequences. Dot. That is an example of a bad thesis. The majority of the thesis that I saw on the practice exam was that. You need to be specific. So although there were many causes of imperialism, such as social Darwinism, economic opportunities, there were also many consequences, such as the acquisition of colonial territories and an increase in racism with social Darwinism. See how I use specific terminologies and topics? That's what you need to do for your thesis. Yes? So like we talked about in class, the easiest thing is to do 3 on both sides. 3 for your argument and 3 for your counter argument, which I'm going to discuss what that is in just a second.
I know you're supposed to use terms, but if you had an argument that you didn't have a term for it, could you do it as long as you...
Yes. So example of that would be racism. However, remember how that very first essay people put racism and they're like, racism is this. There was a lot of it in America, period. Give me examples. So if you were to do racism for a consequence of imperialism, you would say, for example, Americans saw the Filipinos as less than us and not democratic. We therefore became sympathetic in a social Darwinist ideology. So do you see how I gave an example of what racism was at that time? Okay, so that's 1 point. You write a single sentence, you get at least 1 point on the LEQ. Congratulations. Okay. Second point is your historical context. Also worth 1 point. Historical context, there are 2 options. Option number 1, what happened before? To cause the now. Okay? This is the easiest one. Well, I shouldn't say it's easiest. This is the one I would try to do only because on your DBQ for your HIP analysis, it must be type 1. So if we were to do that same example on causes and consequences of imperialism, I would say prior to the time of imperialism in the late 1800s, America was expanding westward. This westward migration proved the Turner's thesis, which said that the American West was closed. In turn, America began to look for more westward migration outside of the country, such as in the Philippines, as in Cuba. And then you begin your thesis. That you must do for HIP, so that's why I suggest that. You may also do type 2, which is something in the time period, and it does not necessarily have to relate. So imperialism is hard because it's only like a 10-year period. But if I were to say at the same time as the imperialist movements of the late 1800s, the Gilded Age was occurring throughout America, and you define and explain it. So this should be about 3 sentences. Now, both of these 2 points are the exact same points on the DBQ. So in theory, if you only do a single paragraph, you will get 2 points out of those essays, because all you need is a thesis, is historical context. So if you hear the 5-minute warning and you didn't write anything on the LEQ, write at least a paragraph with these 2 and you'll get 2 points. Yeah.
So if you do type 1, is there like a certain amount of years?
That is debated among many people. In theory, it should be within probably 50 years of the time period. So if you're doing women's rights movements in Roe v. Wade, and you say Republican motherhood, that's a bit of a stretch. Do it right. Try to do it right beforehand, because think about like what would have happened immediately before. So, for instance, the Zimmerman note gets us into World War I, and that happened right before. Yeah.
Could you say like because I think that might be like a little bit out of for like Roe v. Wade or?
Yeah, you could. You could do gender spheres. They'll think you're really cool because you're using a very unique term, but yes. Okay, so that is 2 points. Now let's get into the meat of it, where you get the rest of your points. Now, okay. Now, here's the most important thing. When you get your essay, you must analyze it. So if you will flip to the very last page. I only gave this to my review kids, but I'm feeling sorry for some of you who don't know how to do this. So I gave it to you too. This is a list of several examples of LEQs on the AP exam, or in some cases you'll see some DBQ. So if it says like some historians have argued, that's a DBQ prompt. But these are example prompts. So when you have an essay, you want to analyze it. So if I have something that is explain the causes and consequences of the Civil War between 1850 and 1877. When you have on your paper these prompts, you first need to analyze them. It takes 5 seconds, super easy. But yeah. So that's another thing that's a surprise. They were supposed to give you, according to the book, one of each. So one would be comparison, causation, and CCOT. And then we saw in the past exam, they didn't. They gave them all as the same. So I can't tell you, because they're changing what they said in the books. The rubrics are different, like the course description is different than what they did on the past exam. It also says the exam questions aren't supposed to be chronological, but they were. So, yeah, we're AP College Board for you. So, first thing that I want to do is I want to figure out what type of essay this is. So, I want to look for the verbs or the terms that I've heard, such as causes, consequences, effects, whatever. So, I see that it says causes and consequences. What type of essay is this? All right, AP exams tomorrow, don't forget. Okay, the causation. Causes, right? So I know that this is a causation essay. Okay? Then I look at the nouns. Civil War. So I know that that's my topic I'm talking about. Then I bracket the time frame. My then goal is to try to figure out what is at the beginning and the end of my time frame. Because if you do something outside, so a market revolution essay from 1800 to 1850, cotton gin is outside of the time period, and yet everybody writes about it. So you want to know what your bracket is. So I know 1877, that one's easy. I know that that's the end of Reconstruction. And if you didn't know that was easy, study up on Reconstruction. So that is the Compromise of 1877. That's when Hayes gets elected. Now 1850, I'm like, 1850, I can't remember what happened. Okay. I'm acting like you guys, okay? So, 1850, if I didn't know what it was, or if I put a really obscure date, like 46, and I was like, I have no idea what happened there, put in general what probably happened around that time. So I could probably guess Dred Scott-ish, or Uncle Tom's Cabin. But obviously in 1850, what is that bracket talking about? The Compromise of 1850. Okay? So, listen. So after I've analyzed this, I now begin my pre-write. This is 5 seconds long. So this is very important, and I highly encourage you to do it on every single essay. What you're going to do is you are going to create what's called a T-chart. So what you're going to do for every essay is in your little space, you create a T. Now I know this is a causation essay. So I know one of the sides is cause, right? What do you think the other side's going to be? Effect. So I do cause and effect. Okay, listen. We have 10 minutes left. So, then from there, I put the letters P, S, E. P, S, E. This is my brainstorming. Political, social, economic. Now, the goal of this is a brainstorming. In theory, you should have 3 terms on each side. So, if I were to do a different essay, a comparison, compare, contrast. If I were to do a CCOT, change in continuity, whatever that could be, then I brainstorm. So I know, like, a cause of the war, I would put, like, Dred Scott. Yeah, well, Jim Crow is actually an effect. So that would be Jim Crow over here, Reconstruction, all that fun stuff. Okay? Once I have brainstormed, hey, I know it's easy.
I mean, I'm hoping we get a question on this.
We'll see. So this then causes you to create all your stuff. Okay? So now this gets into the important parts of this rubric. So again, have the rubric so I can explain to you the points. We've already got thesis and contextualization. Boom, done, easy. Evidence. Okay, right here. Okay, make sure you write this down so I don't have to repeat it a couple times. Well, I'll also be writing it on the board, so I guess that destroys my thoughts. Okay. You've already had a third of the question, or a third of the points. So you're already right on your way to a 6. So, first we're going to start with evidence. With evidence, you can have a possibility of 2 points. 1 point. Use a term and define it. 1 cause of the Civil War was the Dred Scott decision. This was a decision that said slaves did not have rights and that the Compromise of 1820 was void. Boom. 1 point. You should aim to do this for 3 terms. And most of the time, if you get these essays, it will typically just say what were the causes of the Civil War. So that would be the causes. Okay? So easy. 1 point. See how simple it is? Alright, this is where it gets complicated. Not really. But it's where people get confused. Point 2. Using the term, you then explain how it answers the question. So, using my Dred Scott one example of a cause of Civil War was the Dred Scott decision. It nullified the Compromise of 1820 and said that African Americans did not have rights. Point 1. Point 2. This was a change, and that's what you have to put into this. This was a blank. This was a change. This was a continuity. This was an effect. You need to have this. This is what people are missing on their essays. You define the terms, but you never tell me how it was a change or a continuity or an effect. Use this. And you know what some people do on their essays? When they go to write it, they will write at the top of their packet before they do anything, this was a blank, so that they can get their second evidence point. This is a highly missed point. Does this make sense? Yes?
Okay, so in the instance of cause and effect, would you put all the causes in one paragraph, or would you do
Yeah.
cause and effect?
So typically, I mean, you can do it either way. For simplicity's sake, I like to say paragraph 1 is your historical context in your thesis. Paragraph 2 is going to be your argument, which in this case we'll do causes. And with this, you do 3 terms that you define and explain how they were causes. Third paragraph is your counter argument, which in this case is going to be an effect. And same thing, 3 terms, define and explain. And you always finish with your thesis, because the rubric says you must have the thesis at the beginning of the end, and you double your chances of getting it to count. So you do this for 3 terms. Is everybody clear so far? Okay. Now, analysis and reasoning. Last part of the rubric. It seems hard, and it's really not. What the last part of the rubric says is analysis. So, for your analysis point, this is how simple it is. For 1 point, you adequately argue one side of the T-chart. So, if you do all of this, 3 terms, defining and explaining for causes, you have now earned, additionally, your analysis point. You have adequately argued why these were causes of the war. Then, the second point, you do the same exact thing, but with both sides of the argument. So rather than just saying causes of the war, by doing the same exact thing with effects, you have now earned your second point. That's how easy it truly is. Your essay will typically, for a full essay, will be 2 pages of the LEQ sheets that they give you. Half of 1 page will be your historical context and your thesis. About a third of the page will be causes, third of the page effects, and you end with your thesis. Yes?
So technically, you need to do use terms to find 6 terms, right?
Yep. 6 terms in your essay. Nope. Okay. Now, there's one tricky thing. And this, again, rumor mill, because we have no confirmation. If you will go on your practice ones and go down to the very last one on causation. This is a shout out to you, Jack, for emailing me about sectionalism. So, first off, this is not an exact quote from the practice exam, because that would be against the rules. This is an adjusted version with similar writing. Okay? So this is what we saw on the practice exam, which shocked everyone, because according to the books, this should not be how they're written. But guess what? All of them were written the exact same as this way. So, all 3 on the practice exam were all the same type of essay. So, how you would analyze this essay, which is what most people got tripped up on when they did the practice, is because they forgot the whole thing about the T-chart and got messed up. So, on this one, you have evaluate the extent to which the emergence, spell that right hopefully, of sectionalism, sorry it's taking me a second, shaped political developments from 1800 to 1848. Okay, so this is what you do on this. The same thing that we did before for pre-writing and evaluating this. So I know that I'm evaluating the extent. I don't really understand what it's saying. I know I need to look for nouns though. I know sectionalism is a noun and political developments. So I know I'm talking about sectionalism, so separating north and south, east, west, whatever. And political developments. I then know my time frame. I know I start with the Market Revolution and I end with Seneca Falls. Then, this is where people got tripped up. They couldn't find the verb. The verb here is shaped. Now, what shaped would mean? Shaped is basically an effect. This is basically a cause and effect essay. What is the effect of sectionalism? How did sectionalism be an effect? Which means, what would your counter argument paragraph be? Cause. So if I, for instance, say, the Market Revolution encouraged the North to become more industrial, this in turn led to the creation of the Lowell mills in the North and cotton industries into the South with the Black Belt, which was an example of sectionalism. I've covered a cause, an effect, and I've got the sectionalism down. And in theory, as long as I elongate those, I've gotten those. And I know that that's hard. Look for the verb, and that should help you. Also, if there's ever 2 time periods being discussed, it's always a comparison essay. Yes. I hope that helps. I'm sorry if it didn't. Go AP. Pass with a 5. You're going to do great. Oh, that's cool. My husband loves bears. Okay, anyways. I think nullification would be a cause because it's showing the split between the two. The tariff abominations could also be a cause. But I would say, I mean, you could argue either way, but I would say it's a cause because it caused the two to separate into different sections. Because the South is going to secede with South Carolina.
I got this yesterday, and I had no idea why I got this.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me pause this.